What is up, Pod Pals? It's your buddy Adam, and you are listening to Podcasting Business School. It's the show where I teach you how to love your show like a hobby, but build it like a business. If you are here for some podcasting tips on podcast launch, podcast monetization, podcast growth, podcast audience engagement, you're in the right place, especially this week. I've got my friend Brett Fairall in, and this dude is a marketing and lead generation dynamo. I've had the opportunity to speak with Brett before this interview, and he just like, my eyebrows were singed off with all of like the excitement. I was like, this guy is just bringing the freaking fire. I love it. And I was like, dude, you got to come on the show. We got to nerd out on this. We're going to give you specific examples, because I know as podcasters, we really want to pull people out of the stands and onto the playing field. Like, you guys are all in the stands right now listening to this. It's a passive relationship. I want to get active. How do we pull you into my world? How do we pull our ideal listeners into our world so we can actually interact with them, market to them, build relationships, and also build a business? So, Brett, I'm super excited to have you on, man. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it, man. I'm excited to be here.
So, like, I've dove pretty deep on your background. We've got a mutual friend that's told me a lot about what you do, but I love to start off an interview like this with a story. So I want to hear the story about how, like, the first time you realized that you were a marketer. Like, when did that light bulb go off, or when did you first get interested in marketing? Like, were you that kid that was always selling stuff or like recruiting friends? Did you have like a distribution channel of Boy Scouts or anything like that? But, you know, I'm sure there's something there where you're like, I'm
yeah. So definitely the pyramid scheme of Boy Scouts. That was the thing. No, honestly, man, so I grew up hosting a lot of parties and getting a lot of trouble. Like, I didn't drink until I got into college, but I was always around a really good group of people. I had an incredible mom that raised me, that allowed me to kind of like blossom into really kind of an entrepreneur, a creator in general is, I think, that where it all started. So I got super deep into video creation, Photoshop. If anybody, this is a throwback, Corel Draw back in the day. Nice. But the point was, for me, was like, anytime that I could create something new to help people, that's where it kind of started. And, you know, we very much did like the stereotypical lemonade stand kind of thing. But it was always about the people. And for me, I think that to the core of marketing, that's where you need to start. You got to think about whether you're selling lemonade as, you know, an 8-year-old on the front of street to try to help somebody, you know, whether they want to buy just because they want a good or probably a really terrible glass of lemonade, or if they themselves just, you know, want to do something unique or fun or nice for a little kid that's just standing out there trying to just make a couple bucks so we can go and get some candy down the street. So it's one of those unique things, man, where as a marketer, you know, whether you are into the video production side, the design side, the copywriting side, which is really where I kind of found my sweet spot, the more that you can create and the more that you can not just entertain, but also help people think about life and what they do differently, the more of an impact you're going to make.
And I'm glad you brought up the lemonade stand, man, because like, I think I've had this idea before, but I think it'd be so entertaining. Like, this is a reality show. This is something. And you're the type of guy that would actually pull this off. Maybe it already exists. I would love to see like top-notch marketers actually do like a lemonade sales contest. Like, will they have like set like pricing rules or something? Like, who could sell the most? Yeah. And how creative could you get? I'd be all over that. And, you know, I think you would crush. Now, as a marketer and as somebody that you've got your hands in the podcasting space, like I know you got your hands on a lot of like health podcasts and things like that. What do you see out there that just makes you cringe from a marketing standpoint that's you're seeing pop up in podcasting space? Where are the major glaring marketing errors that you are seeing that you're like, okay, we got to pump our brakes here. This is totally wrong.
So I love that question, but I think it has to come down to looking at a podcast in a little bit of a different way. So I'm going to answer the question, but just real quick, man, the thing about a podcast is it's a distribution channel. It's a means of communication. whether you are texting, whether you are emailing, whether you are, watching a movie or providing, some sort of value in a different way, you're articulating some kind of message directly to someone in a channel that they prefer. A podcast is just a very open platform opportunity and free form opportunity for you to share, whether it's, teaching, training, or even just providing tremendous value like this podcast here, to a group or an audience that is tuning in to, to try to better their lives in some way or the other, or for an entertainment value, right? And so the thing that is the most cringeworthy thing for me is that when people are trying to make a business out of a personal blog podcast. And what I mean by that is that I think there's a lot of times on whether specifically when it comes down to marketing is that and I'm going to probably say this way too many times on this show, is that it's about the people you're marketing to, not you. People don't care about you. People care about what you can do for them. And a lot of times people selfishly look and scroll on Facebook, they scroll, or Google. I mean, it's all about them selfishly looking and wanting something in particular. And when you take something that you think is great because you want it, but don't actually start thinking about how other people will receive it or actually want it in their own lives, you may be the guy that wanted to create that one big invention because you thought it was the coolest thing ever, but thinking that it's cool versus actually market testing or seeing if there's a viable interest there are two wildly different things. And when it's so clearly off base between, what is the reality of people actually want this versus what you really want. And that's the cringeworthy thing for me. Does that make sense?
Yes. And I know my audience is laughing because I've told stories before. When I first got in the podcasting game, I would create stuff that I thought was really cool and that no one else did. Yeah. And then there's this story of this membership. I'm like, this is only $7 a month. If I just sell 1,000 of these, I'm making $7,000 a month. Everyone's going to buy it. And I spent hours filming all these videos ahead. I was like, okay, I'm gonna have so many videos each month. I'm 6 months ahead. Bought all this equipment for filming, and I sold 3 of them. Like my mom didn't even buy it for $7. And I was like, so that was a harsh lesson that I had to learn over a few different times.
Well, here's the thing. I'll give you a real world example. So for me, one of my biggest downfalls for the longest time was when the entertainment and creativity level was so much higher than the actual product value itself. And so for me, once upon a time, I created this this mobile website based business that gave you a all-in-one kind of social platform that a couple of years later, there were companies that did it way better than I did, but it came basically with a QR code. And the QR code, when you basically scanned it, it showed you this mobile app. And it was just web-based. So it just had like your main social channels, but it was super easy. It was super cool. It took me forever to develop because at the time I was like, okay, trying to double hustle, trying to make money during the day. But then this was something that I was like, this is going to work. Everyone's going to love it. And I would stay up in the middle of the night to work with overseas developers, because that's when they were online. And so I would try and work this through. But basically, for the business side of things, there was merit, but how I actually executed on that, how I actually tried to bring it to market, I was like, oh, how cool would it be? All right, you put it on a business card. Well, in which, okay, that made sense, but you're now asking somebody who is already not interested in technology. If they have a business card, they're not as likely to want to put icing on top of their already existing cake because it's not a necessity. Right. If your brand and product is not necessarily a necessity, or you have to think about if you're charging a monthly fee for something, you have to look at what is the financial, how does that back out? Like, how does you have to see like, okay, so how, if this is $30 a month or $80 a month or whatever your cost is, how does adding this get you back that money and then some? If it just gets you just 30 extra bucks a month and your fees $30 a month, the effort to get in that and make that happen isn't there. It doesn't make any viable sense. For me, I then wanted to apply it to a resume. So this one business that I created, I took this technology and I said, put a QR code on a resume, scan it, and then you had like a little video of who you were. It had professionalism. Here was the challenge. Who are the people that would care about that? And if the main people you think who's going to want to beef up a resume is likely someone who doesn't have a job or is looking for a new job and isn't happy. And so it made more sense. And they were confident that their resume was going to be good enough as is. So if their thought process is already that, you don't have a business. But for me, I was believing so heavily into like, this is going to work. And I was convinced it was going to work without actually just simply asking the people who in fact would be the actual audience. So I guess, again, to this point and to this example, it's like you believing it's going to work, unless you are the actual target audience and you are that actual person, you need to make sure and double confirm so you don't have to run into got to pivot and got to change or got to do something different.
Yeah, or got to just delete everything. That always sucks. So the vibe I'm getting is that we actually need to understand our audience and our ideal audience members and like know what makes them tick, know what pain points they have, and then work backwards from that and go, how do I solve these pain points? How can I create content that solves these pain points? How can I build a relationship pipeline where we're on this journey together? And that's where lead generation really comes in. I mean, that's, that sub layer of marketing of like, all right, how do we build that bridge to really get connected?
Right. And so, yeah, exactly. And I think that let's talk very specific to your podcast here, and let's talk to, the people who are tuning in and if you think about the lead generation side of things, really for me, I feel like lead gen is it's a fine balance between tchotchke and engagement. So what I mean by that is like you can give away like cool gizmos or gadgets or whatever it is as like captures attention. It's could be considered a shiny white object, and you'll get a lead. Like if you were able to give, discounted coupons away for more advanced microphones, specifically for people here, obviously tuning in for podcasts, because your podcast and your show is so important when it comes to lighting, when it comes to audio, and even when it comes to software and all of your editing devices that you're going to be using or the teams that you're going to be working with. Hell, that's actually not even a bad giveaway in itself, direct connections into teams that could actually help them support podcasters to make life easier, or a giveaway for some kind of podcast show notes or framework for a podcast, especially if you're starting out. So all of these things directly tie into what the true need is of the podcast listener, or somebody who, in this case, is trying to build their podcast into a business. You got to start out with some kind of infrastructure, some kind of framework. You need a business in general. And giving that away, when I say tchotchke versus event or engagement, is people will download things because it makes them feel good, but that doesn't necessarily equate into a raving fan. If you don't put a marker or a dent or some kind of impact on that person's life in some way or the other, or become memorable in some way or the other, then they're going to forget about you. They're never going to open your emails. You're going to be emailing to a dead, contact. And very likely that person's not only going to unsubscribe, but they're likely going to complain, and that's going to hurt your deliverability. That's going to make it so that you're not only going, not only sitting stagnant, but you're also going in the red. So So you have to then ask yourself, like, what is that? What is that thing that you can give away, but also then continue the conversation with someone? And that's, I think, for me, when it comes to lead generation, it's vitally important that you have initial interaction that is so value driven and so heavy front loaded with good content, good value, like gifts in the sense of the consumer's eyes, like give more than what people expect of you and be good at what you're giving them. And what I mean by that is just, don't give them any run of the mill, just everyday thing that anybody can just go get, while also don't have the same type of conversation around it as everyone else. What makes you different, or what makes you tune-inable, is how you perceive things. And the same thing should apply to your lead gen assets, but also should apply to your communication moving forward, because people are looking to tune into people regularly, and people are looking for good content, good information, and not just via a podcast. We're talking via email and other social channels, or other channels as well.
I think one of the keys for me, like I love learning about marketing. The first ever podcast I listened to was called "I Love Marketing" with Joe Polish. Shout out to Joe.
I've been to that event. It's so amazing.
I just love learning about it. So I download a lot of freebies. Like if I hear my girl Amy Porterfield putting out something, I download it every time. She gets me every time. But there are those certain moments when you download it and you feel kind of screwed over. You're like, this is just a PDF with like 5 tips on it. That was the same thing as what was in the show. So I feel like for those that are out there, like what Brett says about adding value, you don't want people to open up that thing and be like, this is just 5 sentences. One of my friends created a lead magnet. It was 5 sentences on a PDF. I'm like, this is nothing. This is nothing. That they're going to be pissed and they're going to unsubscribe. Like you don't want that to be their initial reaction, right?
So here's the only thing I'll have to say. If those 5 sentences got you an additional $500, now how do you feel about it?
Well, that's leading to something,
right? That's for sure. But I think the thing is, okay, let's talk about 5 sentences. And so I do agree with you 100%. If you're just handing off fluff, then that person is getting trained to receive fluff from you. And that is, I think, super important. And it was a lesson for me, like a huge lesson that, we've been transitioning from, through many different channels and testing different channels. One thing that works well, podcast, when it comes to longevity, it's a longer tail as far as it sometimes takes a little bit longer to generate some of the audience like growth, depending on what industry that you're in, and how you approach it. But in reality, it's got a lot of legs on the long term, because it's a long-term investment for other things too. So what's cool is that when somebody kind of tunes in and they believe you and they trust you, like, they stick around. And that's one thing that we've definitely seen, that even if we don't continue to market the podcast and some of the things that we've tested, it still stays. It's still like, we don't typically see kind of a too much of a drop. Which creates a lot of security within the platform itself. So I'm a big fan of the podcast. But one thing that, if you look at an ebook opt-in versus a challenge or a masterclass or some kind of live event, or something, if I go and download that thing, like, I can't, just ask yourself, and I guess everybody out there listening too, what was the last time that you had opted in for and downloaded? Can you tell me anything about it? And we could have downloaded it yesterday. And the most of the time, over 90%, is that people with ebooks are downloading the ebook because they want to get an asset, to get that dopamine rush or whatever, that basically is just getting them excited. They have a new item, but over 90% of them don't actually read it and don't consume it. So how then do you bridge into getting that person to continue to listen and to continue to engage with you. And so that's where you get creative. And that's where there's other elements and other assets that you can include in the follow-up sequences. And you have basically like truly only a very short amount, very handful of emails to make that impact in a really tremendous way. And so, I've got some ideas if you want me to keep going. I don't know if you want me to stop but that's really my thoughts on if you look at that the original point was talking about the 5 sentences.
Yeah.
And those 5 sentences, like if the first one is, here is your link to go get your sole proprietorship or your LLC established.
Right.
Here is your link to go and buy your audio equipment, your lighting equipment, your backdrop, and then here is your notes to follow when you interview. Here are your first place where you would go to find a good, or here's my suggestion on how you find a good guest. So if those are the 5 sentences that gave you the framework, that is the most simplified thing, that, I don't need 5 tents to go up a mountain and go camping. I don't need 30 socks. I don't need, get me up the mountain and get me there. And and there's a big difference, I think, between bulk content and value. If you can help somebody execute with 3 sentences and they feel tremendously supported, that's really what you're going for. But if you write a 400-page ebook and it's a whole lot of opinions and not really actions and fluff. Keep in mind, I don't know obviously what each person's going to have on their podcast. It could be something that is definitely supporting their audience and that's what they want. It could be, obviously there's infinite amount of different types of podcasts and topics and stuff like that the entertainment value, could be a murder mystery, could be whatever. And that's something that they believe in, and the attention, the eyeballs and all of that is really what they're going for. Then something like that, a story or a narrative, could make sense. But if we're talking business and we're talking either direct response mechanisms or we're talking like converting people into business, really what you're hoping for and you're looking for is taking some eyeballs and ideally converting them into loyal fans and paying customers.
Yeah. And that's what I know a lot of my audience members are looking for. And I would love to give you a real life example of something new that I've been working on and kind of have you audit it, pick it apart, break it down, optimize it a little bit. And my audience knows I love to bring them inside. Like they know what I'm trying to sell to them before I even try to sell it to them. Like, we're going to break it down. I'll break down my offers and be like, here's why I'm doing this. Here's why I'm saying that. So I love to bring them in. And that's part of my charm with this show. So I have never done just a downloadable lead magnet. I've always done interaction-based lead magnets, and that's worked really well for me. But I've got a downloadable that I feel like transitions into interaction really nicely. And like we've discussed, I know my audience. I talk to my audience every single day, multiple times a day, and I know what they struggle with. And one of their biggest pain points is the downloads. I'm not getting anybody listening in. How do I market my show? How do I grow it? How do I get in front of the right audience? So I created a downloadable podcast growth scorecard, and I've gamified podcast marketing. So they've got 15 different ways that they can market their show, from posting on social media to going live to speaking on Clubhouse to speaking on stages to speaking on other people's podcasts to running ads. And they're all worth different points. And I surveyed experienced podcasters. I was like, what about the point value? So like speaking on someone else's show is worth 5 points. Posting on Facebook is worth 1 point. Like that's weighted differently.
Sure.
So the idea, I've built this scorecard out, is to go through 4 weeks to a 28-day challenge out of this, where they're tracking, they're trying to improve week to week, and we have a little gamification of it. And so it's the basic format that I've got set up now, Brett, just to kind of lay it all out there, is they opt in, they get the scorecard, they get email one is, here are the goals of this scorecard that immediately pops up. Email 2 shows up at the 24-hour mark that says, here's a breakdown of what counts as far as your points. Because people are like, what if I speak on Clubhouse twice in one day? What's that worth? And how does that work? So I break it all down. And then I'm basically doing follow-up at day 7 and day 28. Right now, I'm just trying to get data and going, all right, how many points did you score? What did you notice? Because I want to do a breakdown of this as an episode of the show as well. Like if you scored these amount of points, this is the range we need to be shooting for. This is where we're seeing the most growth. So that's where I'm at right now. By the time this is out, it'll probably be out there in the wild, but I want to implement some of your expert tips to make it even better.
Yeah. So challenges, whether you call it a masterclass or whatever, I think that it's I think that what you have there is going to be, I want to make sure that you are going to be able to have that widely accepted. The only thing that I can see as a potential stopgap on this is if you get somebody or the audience that is doing this is one, if they're not super competitive, because you have to think that if you're gamifying the experience and you want them to score this, my one question, and again, I'm just coming at in the same boat because I do have my own podcast, and so we're obviously our brand has the brands have their own podcasts. I don't personally, but I'm just thinking like, okay, so it's a 28-day challenge. What are the points going towards? What are the gifts? What are the goals? Is there going to be some kind of as part of the challenge? Usually, there's like some kind of public like notoriety, something. Because if you think about the challenge, for me, I've seen a ton of them done in like the weight loss and the nutrition, the fitness spaces. And so if somebody goes the entire month and then they're like before and afters are then shown out, and then are there a tremendous amount of like exposure given to that person for all the hard work that they did. And so first and foremost, like, in the podcast world and doing that, how can you show that off in the end? How can you help someone, feel even more motivated? And I think that for a 28-day challenge, because I know there's a lot of 7 days, a lot of 14 days, I would just ask or wonder, like, how are you going to continue helping them engage through the entire process as well? And so, like, if somebody gets burnt out halfway through, or in fact, if you are publicly posting all the scores, somebody who's like towards the bottom of this, or they got started late, it may, dissuade people from actually going and continuing and pushing through. Okay. And I'm not saying that I'm just trying, you're asking me about marketing.
Yeah.
I see like some ways that you just maybe want to consider thinking about as you go through this. Maybe you do one thing that we do on when we have long-term, this kind of reminds me of like long-term affiliate promotions and like the pre-launch phase, where we try to get people to come in, and there's a contest that we run for basically for sales, for leads, for clicks, all that stuff, to get them to continue to motivate. We do a leaderboard. And the leaderboard is always visual, and it's super important though when you do a leaderboard that you don't show necessarily the exact dollar amount that this person has been generating publicly, because the people at the bottom of the list don't feel like they could actually catch up, so they give up. And so for you, if you are doing that, show the leaderboard, show who's at the top, and then you can just show like, this person is X amount of points ahead, here they are. And so that way you can get people still to jump in and still be a part of it. It might not also be a bad idea. You do weekly contests in addition to the full 28 to get people to push hard. So that way they're still winning, they're still being a part of it.
Yeah.
The other thing too, that's actually was initially what was interesting when you started telling me about this, it reminded me a lot of a very unique bingo card. And so what's really cool about that is that, like, if you give them X amount of things that they can fill in, and you just have a randomized bingo card that fits into that, now you can also play a unique game, is that when they get that done, then that also gives them some bonus, some value.
Podcast growth bingo. I love it.
Yeah. So like, because you have individual points, and yes, each one are weighted heavier, right? Well, the thing is that you may want to, you may, in some way or the other, you may want to think about like how you engage as well with your community. Because for me, and I mean, I'm not sure if you have this already, but one of the best ways to get somebody hooked right out of the gates is not only giving them very clear expectations of what they're being a part of. That's kind of a given, kind of a mandatory thing. But giving them ongoing support in ways that more than just come directly from you, because there's only enough time in this day that you need to still spend, a tremendous amount of work, not just on your business, but also on your personal life. So you can continue supporting everybody out there and continue being the rock star that you are. But communities, I usually, what I'll do is no matter what we're offering as far as an opt-in or a giveaway or a masterclass or whatever it is, one of the first emails that I send out, and a couple hours after they first opt in, is an invitation to come join a community, a Facebook group. And it doesn't matter if it's big, it doesn't matter. It's about helping someone find like-minded people in the world to connect with. And you are facilitating that. You don't have to necessarily be the person who's posting, whether you have a team, or you may just want to post daily on good resources that are already in there. And the small amount of community could be 25 people, could be 25,000. It doesn't matter. Giving somebody an additional resource that they weren't expecting helps increase not just retention, but includes engagement. And if you want, I can go a little deeper on how we do the podcast, or the Facebook group. But there are ways that you could structure it so that way they have another platform that they can stick in and they can stay connected to. And in addition to your podcast, so you now have them in different buckets, listening to you in different ways.
Yeah. I call those accountability anchor points. Like, they've got the first tool that is big on accountability because they're kind of going through it, providing a score, holding themselves accountable to taking action, seeing what the results are, but then having that community that's also participating in a different way. Or like with me, what I'll probably use for that is my Pod Pal Zoom party, where like every other week I get 20 podcasters together. We all join up, share our best tips and strategies, and do all that and shout each other out, book each other on shows. So like, I feel like that's my wheelhouse, is the engagement, the interaction, the community. So that's easy to pull them into that. One of the things that keep me up at night with my email marketing is that the damn emails end up in the spam box. Like and I've had different experts on. Like I've made a few changes lately where when I email, I try to have one, maybe two links. So like little things like that. Any like low hanging fruit, how to not get in the spam box, tips that you have for us if we're going to put an email marketing campaign together. Like, I want to make sure it shows up in their actual inbox.
Of course, man. Yeah. So for me, like so we, just to give you some context, if you're getting sub 10% open rates, and you're getting, 5% clicks, I mean, you're in a position where you may want to readjust some of your approaches. And I think industry standard, is a slightly around 10% open rate. But I think there's a lot that has gone into what's going on with email over the last few months. It's very difficult to inbox when it comes into like Yahoo, Outlook, and a couple others. But it's just because of the nature of think about what these email providers truly want. They just don't want people to feel like they're being spammed. Because I mean, if in fact Gmail or Yahoo or whatever has a tendency to allow a lot of spam into the person's main inbox, then clearly like that may put them, Yahoo or Google or whatever, at risk for losing consumers. If they have multiple accounts, which a lot of people do, like they'll be like, oh, all I get is just spam from this. I'm going to leave. I'm not going to go. So if you just understand that from a core principle standpoint, what you need to do is you need to provide them things that they're going to make them and encourage them to want to actually open and engage with your emails. first steps first is make sure you're delivering. Make sure that you are delivering on your promise. And so if in fact that you are doing a blueprint or you are doing whatever, or a bingo card or a challenge, it doesn't matter. Make sure that you give them very clear understanding the moment that they register, how to access that thing. So, right, first steps first, it all starts from the very beginning. Okay. For me, being as straightforward and honest and upfront and being a good person is always, and with a high integrity, is always going to work best at the first open and the first page. Okay. So we're talking about just registration. We're not even talking about the email yet. So on the registration page, give everybody a very clear understanding of what they're about to go through. Help them understand the yellow brick road. Help them see what the actual journey is going to be. The next page, you need to make sure, or what I had advised you to do, is give them a clear understanding that it's going to arrive the next couple of minutes, whether your system takes time or however you actually schedule it out. Make sure that whatever that is, that lets them know. And then also, if you are doing a challenge, man, what you need to do, because it's so important for them to be able to even get, like, your challenge dies if they can't get your emails. It's just the truth. It's just the reality. Nobody, if they don't get the updates, they're not going to know what's even happening. So, and then you look bad because they think that you just didn't do your job and you just took their email. But in reality, you just didn't hit the inbox, or that it went to spam. So what you need to do is, I usually give them a list of assets that they can use to help basically engage with you. So first steps first, number one is that you usually have them. What I'll usually do is I'll ask them to share. Get your friends involved so you can do this together, because each person naturally will actually help hold each other accountable. So what they'll do is if they have somebody else to go and join up with the challenge or go and be a part of it, they'll be even more motivated to actually go and not just find your emails, but actually hunt down where all that stuff is. And because whether they want to beat their friend or they want to make sure that they do it to the fullest extent, that's a really great way, first and foremost, to make sure that people ongoing actually participate. And that's the next keyword, is participation. So what I usually do is that I'll encourage some type of response. Okay. So before I get into that, I think the last thing that I wanted to say about like the helping your emails get into the inbox is there's some whitelisting tools that are out there. And if you're not familiar with whitelisting, it's basically just allowing someone to basically just go into their inbox and add you to their contacts, or go into Gmail, Outlook, whichever one it is. And then there's actually something that says whitelist, and it basically just approves you as somebody that's like, yes, I'm okay with this. Position it in the way of, the last thing I would want to happen is last thing I want is the email monsters to eat my emails and then prevent you from getting all the tips, tricks, and free resources that you need to help you insert benefit statement. So the last thing I want is just like the interwebs and all the madness that's out there to prevent you from helping you accomplish your greatest goal, getting your next big guest on your show, help, you going to the next level with your podcast, nailing your next sponsor, all that stuff. Right. And so position it as though like, hey, make sure that you get this, because if you don't, there's a big chance that you could still be sitting in the same spot that you are here today.
Dude, I got to interject real quick. That's the lead magnet I need you to create for me, Brett. Like I need the Brett Fairall checklist of how to get your audience to whitelist your email. Like I've heard the term whitelist before, but I've always been like, I don't know the right way to do it and the right way to present it. So I just want to interject and be like, that's a lead mag that I will I'll opt into gladly. So all right, go ahead and continue.
I love it, man. So what I'll do too is that I've just got some copy that I use for our master classes that I just use in position, and I literally just take people to a link on a website of somebody else that did a whole overview of all the different ways that you need to it's simple steps that you just to whitelist. So I just tell people, go here, so that way you don't miss out. And FOMO is also a huge marketing tool as well. So just if you can position it and you can sell it in the right way, especially for you, man, is like, hey, the last thing you want to do is have your podcast friends show you up, or the last thing you want to do is, miss out on the opportunity to win X prizes or to get and elevate. And imagine getting another 1,000 downloads next month. What would that mean to you? And then consistently getting that. And so that's the first thing, just on more of a technical side. The second thing that I usually do is I usually send an email from another name. Now, there's some canned spam. I'm going to be very clear with this, and this is very important that I need to make sure to acknowledge this, that we are not doing any deceiving kind of way. I do not want you to go in any direction that's going to deceive people or actually take advantage of people in any sense of the word. And it's very important also that you follow all canned spam laws, and you can check that out, CAN spam laws. It's like there's very particular rules around this, and I'm not going to dive into this right now. But what this is we have a customer service representative, and this was inspired. This idea originally, it was inspired by a freaking, like, I went and bought some sunglasses, or something happened about 4 years ago. And I kind of bought it off Facebook. And it was a whatever thing that I got an ad, and I went and I bought. And then a couple days later, I hadn't seen any emails. I hadn't seen anything at all. And then all of a sudden, I reached out, and then immediately I got a response back from a representative from their place and from the business. And they were just a helpful customer service rep that took care of everything I needed. And they just simply said, hey, if you need anything else, just hit me up. This is my direct line. And so I started thinking about, like, okay, well, do I feel more comfortable building a relationship with Costco, or do I feel better building a relationship with the lead customer service rep at their main station? Yeah. And it's obviously the person. And so what I started doing was I started sending from the same email address, but sending from a different from name, which was a rep actually at our in our customer service department. It was something that was good, that was supportive of this. And if you're going to do it, you got to make sure to get a buy-in, guys. But the main thing for this, and this was really a game changer for us and has been ever since, and nothing has actually performed, I feel, better when it comes to the email engagement side. All of our main corporate announcements, updates, all the things that they're going to need from a company standpoint to actually fulfill on their product, I always sent from the company name. And then the next email that I would send, literally only an hour later, would be an introduction email from a rep in there that said, hey, by the way, super excited that you jumped on. Here's my name. And then you can use, a name that makes sense. Here's my name. I'm the lead relationship manager here, or whatever that name makes sense to you as far as a title goes. And I'm here to support you in anything that you need during this journey. You're going to go through some ups and downs. You're going to have links sent to you. You're going to have downloads. You're going to have all these different things. And I'm going to be that person to get anything that you need. Call me your concierge. And for that, I'm going to make sure that your experience is top notch. In fact, just to make sure that you are in and totally excited, I'd love to know what motivated you. I'd love to know what you think about this. I'd love to know more about your podcast. I'd love to know, tell me more about what's going on in your life. I'd love to hear it. And they would respond. And we did and why that's so important is because when you respond, it increases your deliverability score. And then every email there forward, because it's being sent from the email that you send out, every email response that you get, Google and other platforms, they all respect you so much more, and they all give you kudos. And now you're inboxing that much more.
Yes. Brett, that's makes so much sense, man. Like that really,
So just so you know, if you are doing this and you want to implement lightly, and it doesn't have to be you using these 2-character names or whatever that is, simply put in the PS on some of your emails, hey, I'm having a tough day. Or hey, like we did one, hey, I'm having a tough day. People aren't, for whatever reason, getting my emails. Can you please just reply with a smiley face and emoji, something to brighten me up? I'd love to see that. Thank you so much. And the main key here, though, is that when they do reply, you need to reply back, or else it just looks fake. So that was one thing that we did. We use a system called Zendesk for our customer service reps, and you can pre-make like canned responses that are quick and easy, but still full of integrity. Like, hey, I'm going, if they do a more elaborate response on how they're feeling, you're going to want to respond to them, of course. But a lot of it is like emoji, and you're like, awesome, thanks. And you send an emoji back. What that does, it creates the engagement. It makes it feel like, it is real, which it is.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, that's what's going to increase your score. That's what's going to help you inbox. And the more value you drive through that, giving them unexpected assets, gifts, introduction into groups, this is where they start really paying attention to you, because they're now like, this person is doing more than I ever expected. And,
yes,
and let's tune in more.
That's how we stand out, Pod Pals. Brett, man, like we could nerd out on this for another hour for sure. Like this is such a great kind of intro level for my audience that, like, I know I'm taking notes as we go here. So I'm like, oh, this is really, really good. I'm gonna implement this. So yeah, I think we're gonna be due for a round 2 on this conversation.
I'm in, man. Anytime you want to do it, buddy.
All right. So in the meantime, I want to make sure that people can get plugged into your world. And so where do they go to connect with you? Website, social media, all the good stuff.
Yeah, man. So for me, I used to have an agency that I would support people and build out, large funnels, podcasts, all that stuff. I started generating my own brands, Dr. Jockers, Modern Holistic Health. We both have podcasts, and we've spent a lot of time, especially on the Dr. Jockers side of things, that would love for you to come out, take a look at some of the marketing, some of the things that we're doing there. My business is the Fairall Group. I consult and I support, but for the most part, man, like, I'm here to help. If any of you are listeners here and just truly just want some, feedback on things, feel free to hit me up. I'm here to support. And honestly, like, I'm going to go ahead and provide, whatever assets and details that I can, that probably going to be included here with either the show notes or whatever. But yeah, man, just if I can support you, please, I'm here to help and happy to do so.
And Brett, you are true to your word, man. You're a really just good dude. You're a giver. You sat down and talked to me for an hour before, this interview, and like, you just dropped so much knowledge on me. Like, man, this guy's a freaking resource. So I appreciate that so much. I appreciate your willingness to share and give, not only to me, but to my audience here. And I can't wait to see what happens next. All right. Yeah.
Well, I hope that I hope people do, because I got to say, most of the time that offer is not received, or it's not taken advantage of. So be bold. Shoot out an email, hit me up, if I add them up. I don't, it doesn't matter. Like, I'm here to support, man, because no matter what, like, in general, you're doing something for a reason, and it's not an easy thing. A podcast, sometimes, man, like, it's a committed thing. There's a lot of time that gets put into it, and we want to make sure that there's a lot of people that actually reach it, and you bring some good value to this world. And that's what we're here to do. So if I could help support and help throw a little fire or fuel on that fire, then I'm here to do so.
Absolutely. All right, Pod Pals. Brett has given us quite a list of things to consider taking action on. I think this is a rewinder. Listen to it again from the, normally my people are like, oh, maybe I'll listen at 1.5 speed. You might have to listen to this at half speed. Like, Brett and I both sound like we're on drugs, but we'll be going slow enough that you can take really good notes. Podcasting, business school. No, it won't be that slow. But I think this is a rewinder. You need to go back, listen to this one again. So many good things. And remember, it's all about taking action. It's about, without implementation, you're just being entertained. And I want you to actually be able to apply these things that Brett has taught us today, implement, and see results. That's what the show's all about. Pod Pals, I appreciate you for tuning in. As always, I will send you out into the world, wishing you health, happiness, and many downloads. I will see you on the next episode.